What's going on, everyone? It's LJ, and it's time for a catch-all vinyl update. Dig it. The catch-all vinyl update. Not the rock and metal update, not the honky-tonkin country update, and that one's coming next. This is the catch-all vinyl update. These are a ton of fun to do. I'd be lying through my teeth if I said all I ever bought was metal and country. That's generally the bulk of what I buy and the bulk of what I listen to, but there's some other stuff that sneaks in there too. When the deal pops up and it's just right, you pounce and you grab it. And that's kind of what this is. So this next stack I'm going to show you is stuff that's been sitting around for either a month or even a year. It kind of just depends on how long it stacks up and then when my listening mood hits me right to get that kind of stuff on. And speaking of getting something on, we gotta get something going on in the background. So the first one that I'm going to show you is a record on Chess. Love the Chess label. Dig that label. That is just awesome. That is a label you just don't see often. So let me get the needle on this and we'll start talking about it. This is called Muddy and the Wolf. This is pretty awesome stuff. Here we go. Let's get this one rocking. Turn it down so you can hear it. There you go. Alright, so this is Muddy and the Wolf. Muddy Waters and Howlin Wolf. And it's one side Muddy Waters, one side Howlin Wolf. On the Muddy Waters side, he's got some really, really cool people helping him out. He's got Paul Butterfield blowing the harp, Donald Duck Dunn on bass, who you may know from the Blues Brothers movies. And then on the other side, the Howlin Wolf side, that's the side that worried me. He's got Eric Clapton, Steve Winwood, Bill Wyman, and Charlie Watts from the Stones. So I was kind of worried that side was going to turn into like a Traffic album. You know, there's nothing wrong with Traffic or a Derek and the Dominoes album kind of sounding thing. That's just not what I wanted out of this. And thankfully, check out that picture. That's awesome. Thankfully, it didn't do that. So you have the Muddy Water side, which is what's on now. And this side's just insanely good, and the other side is just insanely awesome. So the way it worked out is just a fantastic album. I never see stuff on Chess. Never, ever, ever. So if you are out and about and you do see this one, it's from 1984 on Chess Records. Definitely grab it. A lot of blues stuff in this stack, and then some rockabilly stuff too. First, this is just an upgrade copy of Robert Johnson's King of the Delta Blues. This is a really late pressing, probably from the 80s on Columbia. I do have, I think it's maybe a 60s pressing of this as well, but this one's just stone dead mint, still in the shrink wrap, and it's kind of cool. This is volume 1, so these were his recordings from, I don't know, the late 30s, I think. It's just Robert and a guitar. It's about as raw as Mississippi Delta Blues as you get, and I'm pretty sure this one is in like all sorts of music books and taught music classes, but just so little was known about the guy that all you have is the faceless musician at the time, bent down playing the blues. And Robert Johnson's story is pretty amazing. You know, dead at 27, sold his soul to the devil, buried in some mysterious location, which conspiracy still abounds. Just an amazing classic Delta blues story, ghost story. You just don't even get that stuff anymore. And released about 10 years later, here's volume 2 of, sorry, same thing, King of the Delta Blues, Robert Johnson. And this is volume 2. Having been released 10 years later, a lot of research had been done and people had learned more about him and even discovered a photograph about him so you can see him pictured playing here. So at this point, when the first one was released, really not much was known. What was cool about this one is it's dead sealed, brand new. Absolutely brand spanking new, never been listened to. Cool albums. More on the blues line. So here is John Lee Hooker. This is No Friend Around. This gathers up his recordings from 1948 to 1951. This is on Charlie Records. And this wasn't too bad. This is in mono. It's just dead mint. Dead mint record. I have spun it. A lot of these blues albums, they just have great write-ups on the back. And I get the feeling that people kind of picked these up when maybe they couldn't find what they were looking for, so they kind of settled for something like this back in the day. And it's just the only reason I can think of that these are just in such mint conditions. You know, they had aspirations of being students of the blues, and it just didn't pan out when they dropped the needle, and it turned out to be a mono recording of, you know, John Lee Hooker and his guitar. Flash forward 30, 40 years, the guy's become an absolute legend, and Charlie Records and John Lee Hooker in the shrink wrap dead mint just doesn't pop up. So it's a pretty cool listen. The other one that popped up along similar lines, this is Howlin' Wolf, and it's just self-titled. This one, I believe, this is on Chess Records as well. So check out that Chess label. Pretty cool. I jotted down when it was from. 1957 to 1961. Just pure classic Chicago blues from Howlin' Wolf. Lots of Willie Dixon songs on this one. Again, same thing, the write-up on the back. Just a killer, classic, smoking, stomping blues album. Speaking of stomping, Shake For Me, just so many great songs on this. Backdoor Man, that's the one I was looking for. Everyone should be familiar with that song. It's a killer blues album. All right, heading out of the blues, but still listening to it. Listen to that smoke along. That's just awesome. Cool. Here's another one. I've had this album for years. I just threw it on today because I was kind of doing the Rockabilly thing. This is Marshall Crenshaw's worst photograph, worst album cover in history. This is Field Day. This was Marshall's second album. I want to say 1983. I love this album. Marshall Crenshaw's first couple albums, they are guilty pleasures as all get out. The way he like channels Buddy Holly and the Crickets, his guitar tone, I'm such a sucker for it. This one is the production on this one, it's like intentionally raw, a little echoey. And the more I noticed it, and then I looked it up, it's produced by, what's his name? No, it's the same guy that ended up producing the first few U2 albums. And then it made Steve Lillywhite. Then it made perfect sense. There's one song on here, What Time Is It? TikTok. It could have, should have, would have been a U2 song. But the rest of it is just killer throwback rock and roll revival. Like I say, you channel Buddy Holly and the Crickets with modern day production. I love this album, and Marshall's first album. Also awesome. Then he got off with T-Bone Burnett, and after that, as a producer and stuff, kind of get a little weird. This one's cool. Here's Johnny and the Rockos. This is called Stompin'. This is a Swedish press on Sunjay Records. We gotta check this one out. Hang on. Pull the needle off this guy, set him to the side. This is on Sunjay Records. I want to say this is 1984, maybe. Johnny and the Rockos have been around since the early 70s. Check this out. So again, great write-up on the back. The three-piece, I believe the lead singer is from Scotland. I'm not sure where the rest of the band is from. But you check out the other albums that they mentioned having down here, it's like Eddie Cochran and so forth that are on the same label. Definitely not an album I've ever seen pop up, and it was a hell of a listen. You can hear it right here. It's cool as hell. And when was the last time you saw an album cover like that? Come on. Speaking of rock and roll and rockabilly and rock and roll revival, this is Willie and the Poor Boys. Borrows its name from the Creedence Clearwater CCR album. This has Charlie Watts and Bill Wyman again from the Rolling Stones, so clearly showing and wearing their influences on their sleeves. Who else is here? Jimmy Page, Paul Rogers from Free. If I remember right, when I was reading about it, the bass player from Small Faces contracted multiple sclerosis, and this album was put together, and the proceeds were to benefit research at the time. From 1984, it's a Canadian press on Passport, and it's just classic rock and roll revival. Again, a lot of those guys, the Stones showing their influences they hadn't really shown since those early albums. Jimmy Page from the Yardbirds, those guys just really showing what's still meaningful to them. It's a stomping album. Alright, here's one guy I always roll the dice on when I find him for a good price, and it's Captain Beefheart, and this is Doc at the Radar Station. So, Captain Beefheart for me is, I find it, if it's a good price, I grab it, I either love it or I hate it. There's no middle ground for me with Captain Beefheart. A lot of people know Captain Beefheart right there, Don Van Vliet. I think he passed away about 4 years ago. This is a West German press on Virgin. Killer condition, but you know what? It just didn't work for me. The album before this, which is called Shiny Beast, Bat Chain Puller, I freaking love that album. I listen to that one pretty often. This reminded me a lot more Trout Mask Replica, like designed to confuse you. Intentionally, like, hey, come here, let me confuse you, listen to me. Great condition, a little bit of a moisture stain on the back here. But otherwise, perfect import pressing. And, you know, this is one I think is definitely going to end up going up for trade or for sale because, man, I didn't get it. Ashtray Heart. Look that up on YouTube. He did that on Saturday Night Live. Ashtray Heart SNL. Look that up, and you'll get an idea of what the whole album sounds like. Next up is a blind buy. This is called Red Dog, and just based on the front cover, I had to have it. And I kind of spun it around, and I said, hey, he looks a little bit like Santana. If you follow my channel, I can't stand Santana. I'm sorry, I don't get what the hype is. It just does nothing for me. Seems like the same guitar lick over and over, but that's just my thing. I know people love him. There's the label. This is from 1986 on Survival Records, printed in Canada. No information on whoever he is in the album, on the back of the album. So I had to do my own research, God forbid. And it turns, he's not unlike Duane Allman in a lot of respects. Just slow, simmering, smoldering guitar licks. Intentionally slow, just to really pull you in. Just southern tinge. Not a bad album at all. Again, it's one I'm not entirely sure I'll be hanging on to. But it was a really, really solid listen. And I mean, if you can find a reasonably priced copy, there's no reason not to pick it up. It was a cool pickup. This is the Animal Tracks. It's the US release of the UK album, and the UK cover is right back here. Can you see that? On the back. So that's the cover of the UK release. That's the US release, and it has a different track listing than the UK release from what I could find. But whenever I find the Animals for a decent price in great shape, I grab it. I love Eric Burdon. The earlier, the better. The real early blues stuff is just smoking. Listen to this kick. This is such a good record. This has songs everybody knows. We Gotta Get Out of This Place is here. Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, which I really don't care for. But there's a killer spoken word track on here. It's called The Story of Bo Diddley, where Eric Burdon just kind of, he rolls, and it's like all about pop culture, like this band from Liverpool called the Beatles, and they did this, and really, really early idea, totally ahead of themselves at this point. Again, it was one I didn't have. I found a few Animals albums, and like always, the rest of them were just completely ragged out. This one was in great shape for a great deal, so I could not grab it. And the last one in the stack, this is David Bowie. I always grab Bowie too. Now my Bowie collection starts with The Man Who Sold the Earth from 1970. It goes all the way through Scary Monsters, and it stops there. And by design, I can't get into anything after that. I have Let's Dance, I have one other from the 80s, and I just don't do it. I absolutely love the glam stuff. Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, then the Berlin trilogy like Low and Heroes. Love that period. And then it's it. What I never picked up was the first couple albums, the self-titled Bowie albums from like 67, 68, 69. And this is a German compilation that has those tracks on them. So it has songs like The Laughing Gnome, In the Heart of the Morning. This has that cool international Decca label. I think this is Gemma, it's a German press. It was a cool album. It convinced me now, at this point, I need to pick up those first couple next time I see them. This one definitely got subject to some moisture at some point in time. I don't know if you can see the ripples on camera, but they're pretty bad down at the bottom. But the album was just dead mint, and it was a great chance for a good price to really hear the bulk of both of those first couple albums. And now I know I have to pick them up. But that's it. I hope you guys dug it. Feel free to leave a comment if you have one, anything you know about those albums. Again, for me, it's a different kind of video. It steps away from the comfort of the metal and the rock and the country, but it's really cool, and it's stuff that I dig listening to sometimes too. Why don't you listen to this for a second? I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.